Hello, my name is Morris Narunsky. I'm very privileged to be here today and very honored to be able to introduce our guest speaker, our keynote speaker, Roseanne Zerner. I was also asked to give just a brief introduction of myself, perhaps giving you some insight into why I was chosen for this honor. I first had an opportunity to talk to Roseanne by telephone about a week and a half ago and realized that our stories were very similar. We both went through the horrors of the Holocaust in Lithuania. Roseanne from Kaunas, Kovna in Yiddish, and my family from Sholai, Shavel in Yiddish. Her parents survived the war, my parents survived the war. Well, the majority of our families were both killed. Up until last year, when I attended my first March of Remembrance, I pretty much just knew the basic stuff about my family. I knew that my 3 brothers and sisters were murdered, probably in the November 1943 deportation of children to Auschwitz, although I'm not positive of that. And then my parents were in the ghetto in Shavel, which later became a concentration camp as the Kovna ghetto, where Roseanne is from. And during the war, in later years, when the Russians came and quote-unquote liberated the camps from the German and the Lithuanian murderers, the people in Shavel, and I think also from Kaunas, but Rosie will tell you about that, were deported to Stutthof, some by way of Riga, then by ship to Gdansk, or Danzig as it's known in German, and then on to Stutthof, and the men were then deported to Dachau. So from Stutthof on the northern edge of Poland down to near Plazhna, which is on the opposite side of Krakow from Auschwitz, where I was born, a few months later after my mother was in the Stutthof camp. I have no idea how she got there. I still have to find out that mystery. Roseanne was born to a privileged Jewish family in Lithuania and had a happy childhood, and she and her family were interned in the ghetto in Kovna, in Kaunas, which later, as I mentioned, became a concentration camp, which was one of the first ones in World War II. The camp was liquidated when all of the inmates were either murdered or deported to other camps. I think most of this happened between July and September of 41. Then there was a relative period of a year or two without mass murders until 1943, when the Germans made them concentration camps. Roseanne and her mother and father were able to escape, but about 40 other members of her family were killed, murdered. She spent the rest of the war in hiding and feels her rescuers gave her a second chance in life. Roseanne has lived in thankfulness by giving back through volunteering for Holocaust survivors and by honoring the victims at commemorations and events such as this one. Among other things, she was vice president of the World Federation of Jewish Child Survivors of the Holocaust. And by honoring, she served on many boards and committees. She's initiated, completed, and helped with such projects as a $10 million National Holocaust Education Bill, a U.S. postal stamp for the diplomat rescuer Hiram Bingham IV, a Massachusetts charter bank fees waiver for the Holocaust survivors' restitution payments, and was the poster child for UNESCO 2013 UN Day of Remembrance. When she retired in Boston, she was awarded a citation from the governor as well as the state of Massachusetts. She is a Barnard graduated student, paints, sculpts, does pottery and enameling, writes poetry, has traveled to 86 countries, so she's about 76 ahead of me, and is fortunate to have 2 sons and 4 grandchildren. I would now like to welcome Roseanne.
Visit www.marchofremembrancehouston.org, www.marchofremembrance.org for information on an event in your area. Hear Holocaust survivors, World War II veterans, and/or their families share their experiences as victims and liberators. Experience heartfelt testimonies, healing, and hope. Rise up and march against today's anti-Semitism. Marchofremembrance.org, marchofremembrancehouston.org.